Welcome back to the Birdhouse Dynasty Show Monday Night Football Doubleheader Special. We just had Baker Mayfield lead the Bucs down the field on a game-winning drive for the touchdown. Sorry, I had to start it a little late. I was planning on starting at 9 Central here, but I was watching the game with my kid, and we had to watch that ending there. Baker just making it fun as always. I mean, I don't know if there's another player in the NFL that's more fun rooting for. So, yes, Baker converted on a 4th and 10 right after an incomplete pass to Ibuka on a drop ball that would have been like a 30-some yard completion. But Baker pulled off the first down, running for about 15 yards on a 4th and 10. Then dumped one off to Bucky, picked up about 25 on a screen pass, and we worked it inside the 10-yard line, and Rashad White sealed the game with a touchdown to put the Bucs up 20-19, and that's how the game ended. Whew. Yeah. And now we got more football. It's still on right now. Yes, the Raiders hosting the Chargers. Chargers out to a 3-0 lead here. So we've got this week 2 action just doesn't stop. Great week 2 here. We had some fireworks in a bunch of games. Way higher scoring than opening week. I think that, what was it? I counted 8 out of the first 10 games this Sunday went over. Last week you had the games only averaging 40 points. Generally, the weekly average is around 45. But yeah, last week the games only averaged 40 points. So a real low scoring first week. And then as you saw this week, just tons of fireworks, a lot of receivers getting more involved, and we're going to get into that. Some of the risers versus some of the fallers. You had Jamar Chase with just a monster game, even with Joe Burrow going down. Amon-Ra St. Brown with a hat trick. As the Lions just obliterated the Bears. Rome Odunze, though, good news for Rome owners is he really showed up. But yeah, lots of fireworks this week, and this first game of the Monday night action definitely did not disappoint. Well, at least as long as you're not a Texans fan, and Matt English is crying in his tears. Literally crying in his tears so much that he wasn't able to come on to the show. All right, fine. He actually threw out his back, so thoughts and prayers out to Matt in his recovery. Fortunately, though, hopefully he didn't hurt his back more watching the end of that game. All right. I know you're a tough son of a bitch, Matt. You'll be fine. I know. All right. But anyway, we've got the Chargers 3-0 over the Raiders. Brock Bowers is playing. Many question marks as to whether or not he would get into the lineup. Thank God the couple of leagues that I have Bowers in, yeah, they don't really. It doesn't really matter what Bowers does. I'm winning in both of them, so I don't have to. I don't need a big performance. Yes, so that's all good. Go Brock. Just don't hurt your knee anymore, please. All right, but let's get into some waiver claims for this week that we want to be taking notice on, and it's not just the Bengals who had had issues. We'll bring up old Joe Burrow first. So there you see Joe Burrow out for next week and many more weeks. So what does that mean? That means that Jake Browning is going to be likely the highest waiver claim of the season so far. Well, at least in the Dynasty Superflex formats, he will be. Because Browning, he's not afraid to sling it. Let's just say that. Over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 picks in relief of Joe Burrow. And now it's his team, at least for the next, past Thanksgiving, maybe till Christmas here, to see if he can guide the ship and help lead the Bengals to a potential playoff spot. Now, Burrow hopefully would be back in time for the playoffs, but right now they're saying 3 months. So 3 months is pretty vague, whether it'll be exactly 12 weeks or what. But for the unforeseen future here, Jake Browning is going to be slinging it weekly to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And so if anything that we learned from this last week is Jamar Chase's target share is going to be out of this stratosphere. What do you have? Finished with 16 targets on the day. The unfortunate thing for Burrow, but I don't know how much I want to depress Jamar Chase's value. Like, would I trade Jamar Chase for CeeDee Lamb straight up? I'd probably rather have CeeDee, because the fact is that the Bengals, just as an offense as a whole, are not going to score as many touchdowns as they would have with Joe Burrow behind him. I think the guy that hurts the most from this injury, of course, other than Burrow, is probably Chase Brown. So, if you can find somebody that's willing to give you, if you've got a good backfield and you can get off of Chase Brown for a first, I wouldn't mind doing that right now. But again, Jake Browning, top waiver claim of the week. Now, aside from Joe Burrow getting injured, there were a couple other quarterbacks who got injured. One is a guy who's been up and down so far now, and that's J.J. McCarthy getting an ankle injury in last night's game, and JJ didn't look so hot. Just be honest. I was pretty excited for him after Monday Night Football last week against the Bears, when he pulled out the win on Monday night with 21 points in the fourth quarter. Definitely outplayed Caleb Williams in that fourth quarter. But JJ didn't look great in the first half. Then he threw a pick six, but he was trailing 17-6 heading into that fourth quarter and pulled out the win for the Vikings, giving me lots of optimism. Now, I didn't go out and actually trade for McCarthy in any leagues, but in the 3 or 4 leagues that I have McCarthy, I was pretty pumped, right? I wasn't out there like trying to sell high on the guy. I was definitely more than happy to keep him. But now, this injury is going to sort of curb his momentum that he had, at least from that game. Now, last night was awful. Like, I don't know what happened. You would have thought the fourth quarter could have helped lead into a good outing last night, but man, the Falcons D is pretty scary. They're not. I don't know if I'd put them on the level of surprises like the Packers defense. Now, I don't know how much of a surprise the Packers defense is now that they have Micah Parsons, but a couple of teams who you wouldn't have penciled in as top 10 or top 5 defenses at the beginning of the season. You're looking at a couple teams right now in the Packers and the Falcons who have legit playmakers on the defense, and so they're a couple of teams to take notice of when you're players are going up against them on the schedule. If you have alternates, then you might sway it that way. But yes, McCarthy will be out 2 to 4 weeks with this ankle injury. He's still listed as questionable here, but yeah, definitely put in Carson Wentz as a higher waiver claim. 2 to 4 weeks in the Vikings offense is some solid production. Like, you've seen Kevin O'Connell do a lot more with much less. Okay, Carson Wentz still was a former number 2 overall pick. He was an MVP candidate his second season with the Eagles. Yes, did he go on to hard times in Indy and Washington? Absolutely. All right. But he kind of solidified himself as a backup last year with the Chiefs, I believe. He had been with the Rams the previous year, I think. But anyway, he's bounced around, and now he's going to get his opportunity to shine with Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson. Jordan Addison will be out one more game, so he won't get to throw to him till week 4. But he could see a few games there with the full trio complement of Jefferson, Addison, and Hawkinson, as well as Aaron Jones. I mean, now, actually, no. Aaron Jones did have an injury too. I wanna check out his status quick. Let's do that. Let me stop on this page. Yeah, let me look up Aaron Jones quick. Aaron Jones injury. There we go. So, per Kevin O'Connell, Aaron Jones hamstring likely out week 3 per Kevin O'Connell. Now, how long will he miss? Well, let's just say that Aaron Jones has had a hamstring injury or 2 before, and it typically is 3 to 4 weeks. This guy's hamstrings are worse than Dalvin Cook's. And if you own Dalvin Cook during his career, you know what I'm talking about. So, yeah, that means Jordan Mason, give him a bump. I mean, he's probably got to be in the mix for a top 10 running back weekly with Aaron Jones out. So I would definitely pump Jordan Mason up. Does that mean you want to make a trade for him? No, not necessarily. But again, this might be a great time to deal him away. I mean, think about it. Jordan Mason was somebody who you probably picked up off of waivers at some point over the last 2-3 years. And so if you can cash in on a first for Jordan Mason, obviously jump on that. Even if you've got to give Jordan Mason and a third to get a first, Jordan Mason even and a second, I would consider getting that first rounder for him. Now, it depends on format. If you're in best ball, then you're probably less likely to get rid of him. But if you're in a lineup league and he's like, just a borderline flex play for you, or if it's redraft, this is an opportunity to help boost the rest of your team. If Jordan Mason on a redraft team, typically it was probably drafted as your 3rd or 4th running back. So this is a great chance to pivot, giving Jordan Mason and one of your wide receivers to pivot upwards up the ladder at wide receiver, or even running back if you want, or at quarterback, or even tight end, any position. Whatever position you want to move up the ladder on, but typically the easiest route would be a wide receiver to do that. Now, 3-3 now. Vegas and the Chargers, 7.5 minutes to go. Looks like the Raiders will be getting the ball back here. Okay. Next up, we got one more quarterback hurt, and that would be Justin Fields. Now, based on the way he played, I'm not sure he didn't get hurt getting up out of bed then in the morning. Because, yeah, that was a rough performance by Justin Fields and the whole Jets team, just as a whole. I mean, if you watched any of this game, this was just gross. So Justin Fields being injured, what this means is Tyrod Taylor, who so Justin Fields has a concussion, listed as questionable, but typically that means that he probably will have to sit a week. We'll see on that, but Tyrod Taylor, another guy to look at for a spot start, especially if you have Fields, but also if you have one of the other injured quarterbacks. Taylor is somebody you could pick up more cheaply than having to trade for somebody else. Now, you could probably put a couple bucks on Taylor versus having to put an insane amount on Jake Browning and then a good, decent amount on Carson Wentz. Now, don't ask me to give you percentages because I think, I just laugh when I see those articles that say, oh, we'll put 20% on this guy. Well, okay, what if you don't have Joe Burrow? Okay, literally, how much do you think the guy that has Joe Burrow is going to be putting on Jake Browning? Of course he's going to be, he literally had Joe Burrow, one of the top 5 dynasty quarterbacks. Of course he's going to be putting an insane amount. Now, that all, of course, depends on whether or not Jake Browning is available. The couple weeks that I had Joe Burrow, I still, luckily, had hung on to Jake Browning. So even in the best ball one that I have him, I still hung on to him. So that's just the way I decided to roster construct. I do have Jake Browning in another league, and so I'll actively shop him. There's got to be somebody that needs him, right? That league, the Joe Burrow team, obviously could probably use him. But anyway, that's something you want to try and explore for sure. And even if you don't need Jake Browning, literally this dude is coming in and throwing to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins for the next 3 months. All right, so that pencils him in for me. I don't know. Let's be real here. Where do you put Jake Browning on the landscape of quarterbacks? Who do you feel better about? Some of you hopefully saw what Trevor Lawrence did this week. Would you rather start Trevor Lawrence or Jake Browning? Would you rather start Jake Browning or Dak Prescott? I'd probably lean Dak. Jake Browning or CJ Stroud? I'm leaning Jake Browning. Jake Browning or Jordan Love? That's a tougher question because Jordan Love, he may not be lighting it up in fantasy. He's looking really good this year. I'll admit that. Jake Browning or Michael Penix? Penix looked decent on Monday night, but didn't exactly light up the fantasy scoreboard. And then you've got there's a lot of different things, but look at the dudes who you picked up last week. Mac Jones, over 30 points in a number of leagues. Russell Wilson, not a pickup, but highly regarded as the last quarterback picked in many of your redrafts and a lot of startups. He was just an afterthought. Jackson Dart was easily taken ahead of him in most startups, I would hope. But Russ put up big numbers yesterday. Who else? Joe Flacco's looked all right. Well, okay, he looked all right week 1. He hasn't looked so great. Trying to think. Geno here. Geno looked great week 1. So Point being, these backup quarterbacks that come in, like they're it used to be back in the 80s, you were a backup quarterback and your job was just to come in, make sure you could hand the ball off, and rely on the defense to pull out a couple of wins while the starter was, out and recovering from injury. Today is a different ball game. Like all these dudes come out here slinging it like Jameis Winston, right? Nick Mullins over the past couple of years, he's come in. You've got uh, Sam Darnold when he came in, when he was with the Niners. Baker Mayfield when he was with the Rams, lit it up that one game. So the point being, these backups know that this is their time to shine, and these guys can get paid based on their performance for 2 or 3 games. In Baker's case, it was 1 game. So this is their audition for next year's teams who either have to draft a quarterback early because their quarterback situation sucks. Okay, so yes, I'm talking like the Saints and even the Jets with Justin Fields. Yes, he had a 2-year contract, but the jury's still out whether he'll be the quarterback next year. If the Jets are bad enough, like this is a solid quarterback class. You've got 4 or 5 guys at least that are potential first rounders. So the Jets could be in the mix for a quarterback next year. You've got the Jets, the Saints. Let me think around the league here quickly. Probably not Seattle, Arizona. Don't put Arizona out of the now because I don't think that they're going to sit Kyler. Don't get me wrong. They would trade Kyler and then draft someone. Okay, but if they were to do that, who's to say they don't bring in a Mac Jones? They don't bring in a Marcus Mariota. Again, another guy, if you didn't notice, Jaden Daniels popped up on the injury report, and I want to look at the latest on that. He popped up on the injury report with a knee issue. Must have suffered that late in Thursday night's game, but I'm going to look that up right now. Jaden Daniels injury, and we'll bring that up for you guys. So, injury. So, the injury is not believed to be serious. Sure. He was diagnosed with a sprained knee following an MRI after the loss to the Packers. Okay, so a knee sprain is different than a torn ligament. However, a sprained ligament is something that needs time to heal, and with their franchise guy, we'll see what happens there. It should be interesting all week. But Mariota, again, another guy, if you're a Jaden Daniels owner, you want to be on the radar and make sure you get Mariota if he's available. And if you're looking for a quarterback, if your situation is kind of ugly, Mariota is somebody you could pick up super cheap. So, of course, the Jaden Daniels owner should be putting in a decent amount to make sure that they get him. But if they don't, because you put in $1 or $2 more, like let's say, I don't know, on a $100 budget, you put in $7 or $8 on Mariota, I'm thinking you might be able to get him. That's just, I don't know. I don't know your league situation, how many quarterbacks, whether it's best ball, whether it's lineup league. Know your league. Go off of what guys have been bidding. See how much the Jaden Daniels owner has. See his quarterback situation too. Like if he only has 2 quarterbacks, well then he's going to be going hard after Mariota, I would hope. But if he's got 3 or 4 quarterbacks, he may go a little less after Mariota because he doesn't necessarily need Mariota for for multiple. But just monitor this one because we'll probably get more updates as the week goes on, especially tomorrow. Monitor that one because a sprained knee could be more than just one game. Okay, he's questionable right now, but as you saw, they have McCarthy listed as questionable technically still, and we already know he's out this week. So, yes, just make sure to pay attention to that one as well. So there's 4 quarterbacks this week. Now, Jake Browning, Carson Wentz, Tyrod Taylor, and Marcus Mariota, who all could be available in your league, depending on the size, depending on the owners in your league. So that's something to definitely watch. We all know quarterback is pretty much the most valuable position in all of your leagues. So you score the most points, generally speaking. So yes, it's huge. Now, that brings up a deeper thought, and that is your bench, how you manage your bench. So I'm not just talking about those 4 guys. I'm talking about the other quarterbacks. Like right before the kickoffs at noon, I had a player declared inactive, so I quick threw him on my IR, and I have Josh Allen in that league, and I scooped up Mitch Trubisky. You never know when an injury is going to happen. Even Josh Allen can get hurt. So, as indestructible as he is, he plays reckless. Okay, so there easily could be a week or 2 where Josh Allen has to sit. All right. Jalen Hurts, his backup is Tanner Mackey, I believe. Another guy. All of those running quarterbacks especially seem to be, you want to have the backups, but just because they're a running quarterback or not a running quarterback doesn't mean they can't get hurt. Joe Burrow, terrible offensive line, right? CJ Stroud, terrible offensive line. He got banged up. Baker Mayfield tonight got really banged up tonight. And so I don't think Baker will miss next week, but I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up on the injury report heading into next week's game. Bucs will have the home opener next week. I believe it is against the Jets. Yes. So, yeah. Those are the main waiver claims I see. Some others, if you want to get deeper, Justin Herbert just took a hit. He was sliding down right at the first down marker, and the safety came up and drilled him. So he's going to get flagged for that. Yeah. He was on his way down. Here you go. Justin Herbert getting drilled. Like, this game is violent, folks, and it's not a matter of if you're going to get injured, it's when. Okay? So your bench is super important, regardless of format. Take it seriously. Use those bench spots wisely. All right? What I was getting at is in your deeper formats, of course, old Bill, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, has definitely elevated his status with the Austin Achilles tear that puts him out for the season, but that also means that Chris Rodriguez and Jeremy McNichols come into play now as well. And so you want to monitor them if they're available on waivers. It's not a bad option for the end of your bench because Krosky-Merritt is not let's just say he's not a full bell cow yet, okay? I'm not saying he couldn't become one, but he hasn't been the biggest receiving running back, at least not in college. He wasn't. Doesn't mean he can't become one in the pros, but he hasn't. And those guys are veterans. They know the system. So you could see them getting at least opportunity as the third down backs in that high-powered Washington offense. So those 2 guys are guys to look at for waivers. And other guys, you want to look at guys who are like the third or fourth wide receivers on teams where there is a very, very highly concentrated target share to the top two wide receivers. I'm talking Philadelphia. I'm talking the Rams. Um, I would consider. I mean, Houston literally has one main guy. Um, so those, if you're running back, if you're literally your running back waivers are so depleted that like Chris Rodriguez and McNichols are already picked up. Like there's no running backs on a 53. Like all that's left are dudes on practice squads. Then you could shift to these wide receivers. I'm talking like Whittington on the Rams, Jahan Dotson on the Eagles. Okay, those are decent pro wide receivers. Okay, where if you know Devontae Adams or Puka Nakua or AJ Brown or Devonta Smith were to go down, those guys would come in and see some decent targets on good offenses. Okay, I know the Eagles haven't looked great passing wise so far. AJ Brown and Devonta Smith haven't really lit up the world yet, but if you don't think that, I mean, Devontae Smith should get to 1,000 yards, and I guarantee, barring injury, AJ Brown's getting to 1,000 yards. It will happen. The game flow will determine it, but I don't think the Eagles are gonna just steamroll through everybody this year, and so Cowboys another team, right? Kevontae Turpin looked pretty solid this week. Jalen Tolbert, not a bad option either for the very bottom of your bench. Now, roster construction wise, I don't love doing that. I would lean more towards a backup quarterback because I think you could get more for them. Because again, like the Rams, if Devontae Adams goes down, Puka Nakua is gonna see tons of targets. Jordan Whittington is not gonna see 13 targets. He's gonna see maybe 6 or 7. He doesn't just he's not a 1-for-1 replacement for Devontae Adams. It doesn't work out like it does for running backs, right? There's a certain amount of volume that's concentrated to running backs. So like Minnesota situation where now Jordan Mason jumps into the basically a bell cow role for Minnesota. That's a different scenario. When the Niners, if CMC goes down, Brian Robinson's going to jump into a bell cow situation, right? So that's what I mean. That's why the running backs are more valuable to have as many as you can on your bench, basically. But the quarterbacks as well. There's a couple teams that I've got where I've got heck like 6 or 7 quarterbacks because I own a few of the solid backups. Like you know, Kirk Cousins should be owned. Jameis Winston, even as the third stringer in New York, he should be owned because I would be surprised if Jameis Winston spends the whole season with the Giants as the third stringer. Okay, there's teams out there like the Bengals right now that could trade for Winston because they need a backup now, right? And Winston would be perfect for that system. Can you imagine Winston coming in and slinging it to Chase and Higgins? Oh my God. So that's the point I'm trying to get at is roster construction is important. So make sure you do pay attention to your roster construction. Keenan Allen just scored a touchdown. Wanted to update you there. 10-3 Chargers now. So Keenan Allen getting into the end zone. Just had a deal right before the games tonight where in the Birdhouse One League, Keenan Allen went for a second rounder. Well, it doesn't look like a bad deal so far. All right. Let's talk about some other risers this week, or fallers, or some guys that are just kind of lingering in no man's land. And we'll start it off with Where do we want to go? Yeah, let's go down to Miami and talk some Tua Tagovailoa. Whew. All right, so Tua's been sort of taboo over the last couple of years, ever since that 2 years ago he had all of those concussions, and a couple of them really nasty looking, to the point where people are literally just scared to even talk about the possibility of owning him on their roster. You really have got a lot of your leagues. You've got probably a divided, I'd say half of the league would just not even want to roster this guy. But the fact is, he's got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle that he's throwing to. And, both of them showed up this last week. Waddle was banged up, but played and got in the end zone. So Waddle, many were down on last week, even with the possibility of Tyreek's off the field stuff going on. But both Tyreek and Waddle showed up. There's another situation. You got Malik Washington as the third wideout if one of those two were to go down. But again, it's not a one-for-one replacement. Keep that in mind with wide receivers. You don't want to roster too many of these guys that are wide receiver threes on teams, unless it's best ball, then it's fine. But in a lineup league, I just don't like wasting those roster spots on guys who are getting 1 to 3 targets a week, and then the occasional 4 or 5 target game where they get into the end zone, and then it's like, whoa, this guy could do something. But they're never going to, just based on the target share and the way it's distributed on their teams. It's not like the Packers, right? Where the Packers, you have no idea week to week who's going to lead the team in targets. Though Tucker Kraft has definitely stepped up to being really Jordan Love's number one option right now. He's a dude who I had been pretty high on this off season. I had pushed him up all the way to my Dynasty tight end 5, right behind Kittle and Laporta, after the top two, of course. Unfortunately, even though I had him at tight end 5, that didn't mean that I was just valuing him right there with Kittle and Laporta. So I didn't end up drafting him in any leagues because I was looking at the wide receivers or running backs or even the quarterbacks that fell into that area. And tight end's just not a position, even in the tight end premium leagues, that you find people really getting excited over going after on the trade market. Like, you could throw Tucker Kraft out on the block in any of your leagues if you own him, and you're going to get some bum and a second offered to you. You're going to find it very tough to find somebody just willing to throw you some random first for a third round tight end who, yes, had been promising. Definitely last year showed some good spurts. Again, I liked the guy, but I didn't even end up drafting him in any of my startups. So back to the Dolphins, though, does this mean that Tyreek and Waddle are somebody that I want to go out and acquire? Not really. If I've got them, I'll hang on to them, or this might be the last chance to sell them. That would be the route I think I'd be looking at right now. Tyreek, definitely an explosive veteran, but there's the window of opportunity to sell a guy like Tyreek is closing, and I just don't. He's not a master of his craft like Devontae Adams, right? Devontae Adams, I look at, and I said it in this off season, I see him as, and I know Matt English did too, see him as a potential Larry Fitzgerald late career, where Fitzgerald had 2 or 3 seasons of over 1,000 yards in his ages 33, 34, 35 seasons. So I think that Davante Adams could be in line for that. And if you watched any of the Rams game, you saw the targets. I mean, Davante Adams had more targets than Puka did this last week. I don't know that's going to happen every game, but you can see that the Rams are trying to force feed Adams the ball inside the 10-yard line. So, do I see Tyreek in that mold? No. I don't. I think Tyreek's got too much going on in his world off the field, and then on the field. When he's on the field, he's a definite competitor, right? But he just seems, he's more Antonio Brown than Larry Fitzgerald. We'll just put it that way, right? So, Keenan Allen, on the other hand, Keenan Allen here just got in the end zone. He is in the mold of a Davante Adams and Larry Fitzgerald. Like, I could see him having a nice, strong bounce back year here with the Chargers. I don't know that I'd pay as much as a second. It depends on the team. If I really need him, if it's a lineup league that if I'm going to pay a second for an old dude like Keenan Allen, it's got to be because he's going to be playing in my lineup every week. I'm not just throwing a second out there for Keenan Allen to have him sit on my bench. Okay, that's wasting draft capital. Okay, so yeah, that's my thoughts there on the wide receivers. As far as let's go back to seeing who else might be moving up the boards. If we go, let's just do this. This makes it a lot easier. If we go to okay. Can't really do that on laptop. I just hate the desktop thing for Sleeper. But if we look at the trending free agents right now, all right, you got Jake Browning up at the top. Daniel Jones somehow. There's another guy. Okay, we'll talk about Daniel Jones in a second. Zach Ertz should be picked up in most leagues. Ramondre Stevenson should be rostered in most leagues. This is obviously some kind of combination of a redraft format. Carson Wentz then. Troy Franklin. So Troy Franklin, let's bring him up here. Troy Franklin had a great week 1 this last week against the Colts. Even a better. Okay, so he had a great week 2. Week 1, 4 for 44. If you were savvy enough to scoop him up, you would have, and actually played him, you would have really reaped the benefits with an 8 for 89. And now, so do we believe that Troy Franklin has taken over the number 1 role? Like, Cortland Sutton has just been non-existent so far. I don't know that I think that Cortland Sutton's washed, but if anything, he's definitely been disappointing. I don't know. Are you going out and giving up a second for Cortland Sutton right now? 2/3? I don't know. If I've got Bo Nix, I might be a little bit more willing to go after him. He's a great red zone target. But look, Troy Franklin and Bo Nix played together in college, so there's definitely a connection there. So I wouldn't be surprised if Troy Franklin out of nowhere becomes the guy. Like, we haven't seen a whole lot from Ingram yet. So yeah, Troy Franklin definitely, if he's on your waivers, he's somebody to go after, more so than, like I was mentioning, Jahan Dotson or Whittington or Malik Washington. Troy Franklin's worth putting in a few bucks on. Bashul Tutin should be rostered in all Dynasty formats. Romeo Dobbs, Michael Mayer. Mayer is only on here because of the Bowers injury. Russell Wilson, Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson getting into the end zone this last week, 5 for 49 and a touchdown, following up an 8 for 76 week. So this is what Juwan Johnson, every year there's a couple tight ends that finish top 10 that were not considered top 10 tight ends, and Juwan Johnson is definitely in line for that kind of action. Even if you want to say he's the third option there with Shaheed and Olave in the mix, the Saints are going to be throwing the ball a lot this year. Okay, they're going to be trailing in the second half. Juwan Johnson's a dump-off option for Spencer Rattler right now. Whether it becomes Tyler Shook, we'll see. So Juwan Johnson, definitely worth a pickup if he's available somehow in your league. Blake Corum should be rostered in most Dynasty leagues, but if he's not in your redraft formats, he sneakily got in the end zone and put up 44 yards. So just a situation to monitor. You know, Sean McVay's always been a little tricky with the running backs. Now, they paid Kyron Williams before the season, which was a shock to me. But, just something to watch. I mean, it obviously means that Corum is ahead of Jarquez Hunter, though, which is definitely disappointing for me because I had plenty of shares of Hunter, hoping for the best there. Wan'Dale Robinson, is he a real thing, or is this just the product of one wild game? I'm going to lean more towards the product of one wild game, but that doesn't mean that Wan'Dale Robinson isn't worth having as your fifth or sixth wide receiver. Great guy to plug in on bye weeks. He's definitely somebody that can help your floor in best ball. Now this week is a complete aberration. Let me just put this week's game into perspective for Wan'Dale Robinson. Okay, he finished wide receiver 5 on the week, 8 for 142 and a touchdown, with 29 points last season. So that's 29 points after going 6 for 55, which is pretty much his staple game. 6 for 55 for Wan'Dale Robinson. Last year, Wan'Dale Robinson, his high, played in every game. His high week was 17.6 points, wide receiver 20. But as you know, like, there were only 3 weeks where he had under 5 targets, and the majority of his weeks, he was somewhere in the range of 8 to 12 targets, Wan'Dale Robinson. So, and again, I don't know, this is somebody, if he's on a non-contender, would I throw a second at Wan'Dale Robinson? Like, you could do worse, I'll say that. Wan'Dale is just 24 years old, so this is a sneaky guy there, and, there's going to be room to operate opposite Malik Neighbors, and so Wan'Dale Robinson is a sneaky buy, I'd say, a buy high, actually. Jared Goff, how is Jared Goff on trending? Like, how is he even on waivers? Tyler Algier with a solid week. Juwan Jennings, Ferguson, Tyquan Thornton. Okay, so Thornton got in the end zone. 2 catches on the day, 59 yards and a touchdown. It was a 49-yard touchdown, I believe. Thornton, I mean, sure, while we're waiting for Rashee Rice to come back, Thornton's not stealing any of Rashee Rice's targets. He might be stealing a few of the deep balls that would have gone to Xavier Worthy otherwise. But I think that, Worthy was questionable most of the week. I think that Worthy's going to be back next week. So I think Thornton's somebody you let somebody else bid on in your league. Of course, if it's best ball, fine. You throw him on the bottom. Alec Manor. Okay, so let's talk Alec Manor, because the Tennessee Titans came into this year with a big question mark at their number 2 position for wide receivers. And so Cam Ward, of course, known as a gunslinger in college, and so he's come out slinging. If you saw the touchdown pass before the half, it was pretty crazy. So Io Manor last week, he goes 4 for 56 and a touchdown. He's pretty much solidified himself as the number 2. Chimere Dike is even a sneakier ad in a super deep leagues, because he did get 5 targets, sort of stealing some from Io Manor. Calvin Ridley went 3 for 57, I believe, so he hasn't really had a blow-up game yet, but I think it's coming, and he'll consistently get targets as the number 1 option there for Cam Ward. But Io Manor here, 6'2", 206 out of Stanford, one of those guys picked in the 2nd or 3rd rounds of our dynasty drafts, maybe even fell into the 4th depending on when you had your draft. But Io Manor's definitely carving out a role, looking very good on the metrics, and so if somehow he's slipped through the cracks and still available, by all means jump on him. And that goes for redraft as well. All right. So Tyrod Taylor mentioned. Hunter Renfrow went 7 catches for 48 yards and a couple touchdowns this week. So, yeah, Hunter Renfrow could definitely be a thing this year, because opposite Tet McMillan, and while Jalen Coker is hurt, Hunter Renfrow definitely has the opportunity to be, well, exactly what he was. Okay? He was released by the Raiders because he was sick last year. He had some sort of weird disease. I don't even know what it was exactly. I'd have to scroll back through here. Yeah, it doesn't go far enough back. But Hunter Renfrow, we all know, had a few big years there with the Raiders as a solid possession receiver, and so Hunter Renfrow definitely worth rostering on the bottom of your teams. Bryce Young looked awful in the first half, and they were playing catch-up the whole second half, and they're going to live and die with Bryce Young this year. It's another spot, though, where who knows, if Bryce Young doesn't get it this year, like, he could easily be done potentially, and so just something to monitor. But in the meantime, Renfrow is going to be the number 2 guy there. So, all right, there's some risers and fallers for you. We talked about the waivers. If you've got any questions, go ahead and throw them at me on the Patreon, patreon.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show, or buy me a coffee, buymeacoffee.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show. We'll have more for you this week. Happy to join you on this fun Monday evening, Bucs victory Monday. Yes, we're 2-0 on the road. Great start. Love it. All right, make sure to smash that like and subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back with more this week. Thank you for joining tonight, and make sure you remember to never stop working.